As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and the 2024 presidential primaries are not slowing down in terms of the mudslinging and kind of the intensity from the campaigns back and forth. And so the latest that has been online, you may have seen this if you are kind of too online, you may have heard of it or not, but there's a great piece by my good friend Adrian Norman, who's going to join us right after the break, that is titled Anti-Trump Iowa Attack Ad Blamed on DeSantis Campaign is linked to shadowy Democrat activist network. Public records suggest progressives are actually behind the divisive mail piece purportedly being sent to Iowa residents. So this was a really interesting piece, and I saw this posted by my good friend Steve Deace, and a lot of questions surrounding that, and a lot of people had opinions on the content of the mailer, but nobody really except Adrian actually asked questions about whether or not this mailer was what it purported to be. And the immediate assumption that this was just an attack ad from the DeSantis campaign, I think should cause all of us to step back and pause and say, what are we presuming about the content that we see online? What are we presuming about the candidates saying back and forth about each other, whether it's DeSantis saying something about Trump, Trump saying something about DeSantis, Vivek saying something about both of them. I mean, we all need to, as concerned and active citizens, make sure that we are investigating the truth of these assertions and not just taking as fact something that we see on social media, something that we hear on the news, or something even that a friend says or we see on a social media post. So we're going to talk about this and break this all down. Is the mudslinging actually being helpful in the 2024 presidential cycle? And we're also going to preview the debate, or really the town hall tomorrow night, that's going to be in Iowa that President Trump is not participating. So Adrian Norman, my good friend, is going to join me right after this. With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to your to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you. So joining me now is the author of this great piece on timcast.com, Adrian Norman, who is a writer, political commentator, and activist. So Adrian, first of all, I think this is just another dirty politics sort of thing that, this image goes up on social media and everybody just automatically assumes that this is the DeSantis camp trying to take a swipe at the Trump camp. And I don't think anybody besides you actually really dug into where did this come from.
Yeah, I was coming off of a trip and I saw it when I got back. And, like most things that kind of circulate social media these days, as soon as I saw it, it was pretty inflammatory. Got a lot of traction right away. A lot of big accounts started sharing it. but I had questions about it. It's one of those things where it seemed just too on the nose and too sensational. Obviously, there's been a lot of back and forth in terms of the mudslinging that's gone on between DeSantis supporters and Trump supporters. I'm personally not endorsing anybody in the during primary season, but immediately a couple things sort of tipped me off that this might not have been exactly what it was purported to be. So I decided to kind of dig into it a little bit before weighing in, and there were just a few things that stood out, that were very obvious to me when I looked at the purported mailer that went out, and then just kind of doing some digging. And it didn't take a ton of time. I mean, it probably took me less than an hour to kind of put this together. But one of the things that first stood out was that it didn't look like this mailer had actually gone out. It looked like maybe something that was a production piece that had been printed on some sort of card stock, because it looks like it was printed out, but it was missing a lot of the features that you would normally see on a legitimate mailer. There was only one image of this purported mail piece that had gone out circulating social media. So one of the things I looked into was, how many people actually shared this? If you got a mailer going out to 10,000 people in a state that's going to be the leadoff state for the GOP primary election, thousands of people are going to get this. There's going to be a significant number of people, even if it's just a few dozen, that post this image on social media, and nobody did. There was only one, and it traced back to one single left-leaning blog out of Iowa. So as I kind of dug into this more, I found more anomalies about the mailer and also about the connections to what turned out to be a web of progressive activists who seemed to be behind the whole thing. My guess would be knowing that it would ultimately be attributed to the DeSantis campaign.
Yeah, and you mentioned, that a lot of these features that weren't on the mailer that you would see from a lot of different sources if this went out to say, 10 or 20,000 people. And when we talked about this earlier on my radio show, you mentioned, there's no blacked out address. There's not even a stamp. There's not a barcode that would be for the post office or anything like this. And it also looked very pristine, like this was a postcard that had never been mailed or handled really. And so what's interesting too is, I didn't even notice that. And I saw this circulate on social media and, and also was like, okay, people were commenting on how this is such a diss against President Trump. And I just looked at the content, sort of just presuming that this was mailed by some entity, which, was probably a mistake on my part to not even ask the questions that you did. But I just looked at the content itself and thought, okay, where's the lie though? Where President Trump has been held up as an example from the kind of the new GOP, which is very inclusive of the LGBT agenda. You have even like the MAGA drag queens. You have Caitlyn Jenner, who is, formerly Bruce Jenner, who kind of led the way for some of these, men that identify as women and dress as women. You have the Pride Coalition. You have Rick Grinnell, who has been a very openly gay activist that worked for President Trump. And even when I worked for him, that was one objection I had as a Christian conservative and would always say, I'm part of the evangelical coalition. And, I disagree with that. I disagree with Ronna McDaniel as the head of the RNC, tweeting about Pride Month, all of these things. So, and I'm also like you, I'm not endorsing anyone. Everyone knows that I support Governor DeSantis. But at the same time, I'm not endorsing anyone, and I'm certainly not anti-Trump. And yet you have this total vitriol that immediately starts with all of these online, mainly political Twitter, kind of battles between all of these different influencers that if you even say something that is positive about Governor DeSantis or that is even questioning or disagreeing like I do with the LGBT inclusive Trump campaign, then automatically you're labeled as a traitor, you're terrible, you're all kinds of names and everything. And especially with something like this that's immediately attributed to the DeSantis campaign as mudslinging, I think we kind of have to take a step back and say, is this really helpful in any way to conservatives looking at the best candidate to actually go out and defeat the progressive left? What do you see from all of these people that I would say are just far too online?
Yeah, I didn't see exactly who shared it. I know it made the rounds because on something like Steve Deese had the initial post, I think. And on a few posts that I saw, there were millions of views. You can see view counts on Twitter now. You can see the engagement as far as likes, as far as retweets. I can't talk today, and those sorts of things. But it's just, I think it kind of speaks to the political climate that we're in right now. And we're in a climate where outrage is sort of the currency of social media, and being a political doesn't change that. I think it may amplify it to a large degree. And our initial reaction whenever we see something that may be uncomfortable or something that affirms our worldview, whether that be in favor of one candidate or opposed to another candidate, we run with it without really taking the time to sort of do our homework, because it's confirmation bias, right? It fits into something that we already want to believe. And it's easy. Social media is a quick medium. You know, they used to say a lie can make it halfway around the world before the truth has its boots on. That's even more so now in an age where we have technology that allows us to reach people all the way around the world in seconds. So when we see an inflammatory story like this, I mean, it's easy to sort of jump on it and make it fit into whatever box that we want it to fit in. I don't think that's unusual now. Unfortunately, it's more of a feature rather than a bug of our current political establishment. And I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. I just saw a report that said this is the most divisive, nasty time in U.S. politics since the Civil War. I don't see any factors that would be looking to sort of curtail that or dial that back in this age of clickbait and rage bait and everybody being so polarized, and we're very tribal right now. And it's sad to see that within the Republican Party and with conservatives, because we're supposed to be the side that doesn't do that, right? We're supposed to be focused on policy and individualism and personality, and not a cult of personality, and not just blindly following anybody, regardless of who you're supporting. So I think it would do everybody a bit of good to sort of step back a little bit and sort of reevaluate how we're approaching all of these things and restore a little bit of sanity to these conversations by getting back to the basics. And again, when something this inflammatory pops up, I mean, the first thing we should be doing is sort of assessing if this is even real. Because if it's so on the nose, there's a good chance that something is a little off, and that was the case with this story.
Yeah, and I think you're so right that so many people that I'm seeing that are, genuine conservatives that really care about the country more than just the cult of personality, any personality, not just talking about Donald Trump or the MAGA movement or anything, are kind of wanting to have this call back to restoring sanity, a rational, logical discussion, genuine debate that is merit-based and policy-based, not just all of this mudslinging. And I'm seeing a lot of that. But then it doesn't seem like anybody on any side, and particularly, I think, the Trump campaign, with how much they're attacking Ron DeSantis and his team, and even supporters. I mean, even somebody like me who, I've posted things that I agree with Governor DeSantis, and yet now, everybody thinks that I work for him, which I don't, which is a total lie and ridiculous. And so how effective do you think that some of this mudslinging is? If the Trump campaign is continuing this, and a lot of the influencers on all sides, I mean, even Chris Christie, he's literally running for president just to troll Donald Trump. And while, I'm interested in his opinions on this, and I think, having him on the debate stage is fine, I think that speaks to the core of the insanity of the 2024 election, that you literally have somebody that is taking donations, has met the threshold for 40,000 unique donors that are donating to his campaign just so he can troll President Trump. I mean, that's kind of absurd. So where is the divide here between people who are calling for sanity, and yet it seems like the trolling is at least effective with some of the people that are too online, but I don't really see it being effective to the average voter that cares about just life in general and their family and their job and inflation and all of these other like real kitchen table discussions.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, and it's my sentiments sort of align with the people that I've talked to who don't spend all day on social media like the politicals. I mean, it's really annoying. I mean,
Yes.
there's so many other things that we need to be focused on. I mean, even though the economic numbers are coming out showing inflation is subsiding, which I have some questions about, there are real problems that have dogged people. People's savings are ruined and destroyed because of the inflation that we have had. We have Marxists and communists literally trying to take over our schools and all of the institutions in this country. We have housing problems. I mean, interest rates are so high, people can't refinance their mortgages. People can't buy new houses. We have a homeless crisis. We have an illegal alien crisis with people storming our southern border. The country spends we were spending $150 billion a year on illegal immigration. That's now going up to $163 billion annually because of the surge of illegal aliens coming through under the Biden administration. This is unaffordable, right? We have so many other things that need our attention, and we need solutions to those problems. And I think all of this infighting amongst conservatives takes attention away from those things. It takes attention from the limited window of time that we have to get state legislatures to introduce further election integrity measures. We have all these things that we could be spending our time on, and we're sitting here like I think of the meme with the Seinfeld characters where they're slapping hands. That's what we're doing right now. This is ridiculous, and progressives have to be laughing. And all for all of the comments that we have about stolen elections and this and that. At this point, they don't need to steal anything because we're not doing what we need to do to mount a successful chance at winning the 2024 election as it is. This is ridiculous. So I think, again, it would do everyone a bit of service to sort of take a step back, reevaluate our approach to all of this and say, hey, you know what? You have your preferred candidate. I have my preferred candidate. Cool. That's fine. They're going to duke it out during the primary season. That's what's supposed to happen in a constitutional republic. The system is functioning exactly the way it's supposed to. It's the people who aren't.
Yeah, and so well said. And I couldn't agree more, because this is what the primary is supposed to be. And for the people who are claiming, that you're a traitor if you don't support Donald Trump and he's the incumbent, I mean, this is an open primary. And so while people have their preferred candidates, that's literally the free and fair election process in this country. And I thought that MAGA was actually the group that wanted free and fair elections. And so it seems like they're kind of speaking out of turn or out of both sides of their mouths by saying you have to support Donald Trump and then you have to also support free and fair elections. But this question of loyalty really started with Donald Trump, with him actually perpetuating that talking point. So what is your thought on that? Instead of people, and people who still support Donald Trump and they have a merit-based reason to, fine. But people who support another candidate for a merit-based reason, also fine. That's the whole point. So what's your opinion on this whole question of loyalty versus being a traitor?
Well, look, I can understand where that comes from. I mean, President Trump was harassed mercilessly from the time he came down the escalator in 2015. The guy hasn't caught a break, right? He didn't really have a first term. I mean, he was up against the ropes from the day that he took office and fended off probably the greatest attack in political history against any candidate that this country has ever seen. I mean, from the Russia collusion hoax to the Ukraine hoax, the impeachment hearings, the lies about January 6th. I mean, it's been nonstop. Now the guy is facing criminal indictments. He had the document seizure by the FBI at Mar-a-Lago. We have an attorney in Georgia, Fannie Willis, who's looking to bring charges as early as next month. We have a special prosecutor who's handling the Mar-a-Lago case, who may be bringing additional criminal charges in a progressive jurisdiction to try to make it more likely that charges will actually stick. He didn't get a fair shake, and a lot of people would love to see him have a second term and be able to go in and take a sledgehammer to the deep state and the establishment like he was supposed to do the first time. I get it. There's a case to be made for that. But at the same time, we do have to make sure that in terms of our own principles, we're not violating those principles and saying, hey, you have to abandon the system and we can't have any other challengers in order to make it easier for our candidate to win, right? That's not the American system. And look, there shouldn't be any pushback, in my opinion, from anybody on the Trump side. I mean, the guy's up by like 30 points, right? He's polling at like 55% on average within the GOP. I mean, he's way, way ahead of DeSantis, and it's almost not even worth talking about any other candidates because the lead is so great. At this point, barring any major development probably related to one of these criminal cases, I mean, the likelihood is that he's going to be the nominee. But again, a lot can change. We're 6 months away, more than 6 months away before the first primary election. So again, with our system here in the U.S., this is predicated upon the fact that anybody who wants to run is able to run, and may the best man or may the best woman win. And I think we should all kind of get back to those basics and support who we want to support, but focus on what we do want to see and what we do want to change and who we do like versus simply trying to tear each other down and destroy the supporters of people who maybe are a disfavored candidate.
Yeah, and I think that's really the the constitutional position to say that, anyone who wants to run can, and if they meet the certain thresholds, they can participate in the debates. We are a free country in the sense that we get to select and prefer our leaders, and people who want to run can. And so even though there is a case to be made, and I mean, I was there with President Trump from the first impeachment all the way through the end and of his first term. And you're right that, I mean, he has been the most harassed and persecuted American politician probably in U.S. history, completely unfairly. And there is a case to be made that he should get a second term. And that case, though, should be made in a way that is meritorious and with respect to the other candidates to say, listen, with respect, I'm not supporting you because this is why I'm supporting Trump. And I saw someone on Twitter actually yesterday that tweeted basically, saying everybody knows that I'm, for my preferred candidate. But she said, but I would at least respect President Trump if he wasn't actively just lying about Ron DeSantis and the campaign wasn't actively just smearing people and individuals who have a difference of opinion. And I think that hit the nail on the head, because I would have so much more respect for the 2024 campaign if they were doing things in the same way as the 2020 campaign that I was the senior advisor of. I mean, none of this stuff, I was texting, a few people and prior colleagues when I was seeing, just some of this total vitriol and saying, I wouldn't have worked for the 2020 campaign if this was what we were doing back then. I mean, it seems like there is such a difference in the lack of quality of arguments of the 2024 campaign from the 2020 campaign. And I hope that people are taking away from our conversation that we need to be conservatives first. We can support ardently Donald Trump or someone else, but we can do so from a position of rationality, logic, and respect for our fellow conservatives. Because at the end of the day, we're not each other's enemies. The enemies are the liberal leftists that want to destroy our country and want to tear down the Constitution. And so, as you looked into, Adrian, this mailer, I mean, this is just one instance of how people are so quick to point fingers and judge the other campaigns instead of getting to the truth. And that should be true for all issues, that we look into the merit of the claim, not just believing everything that we see on Twitter. And there are so many things that have just been outright lies about Governor DeSantis, who 5 minutes ago everybody on Team Trump was lauding as the greatest Republican governor in the country. He still is that, and regardless of whether or not he gets the nomination for president, we shouldn't tear down his credibility in the state of Florida. I mean, I'm a new resident there. I want him to continue to do a great job if he remains governor for the next 3.5 years. I mean, he just won re-election in November, and so I think we have to kind of play the bigger picture and the longer game instead of just being these cults of personality. I mean, attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene for supporting Kevin McCarthy. I mean, just some of these infighting things that I don't see as healthy or beneficial to conservatism as a whole. And it really seems like this is unique to the Republican Party. You don't see the liberal leftists doing that. And that actually, unfortunately, speaks better of them, I think, than it does about us. Would you agree?
Well, again, it's kind of a huge warning for 2024 because, again, this all of this started. It was how many days of controversy over this, and it turned out to be activists on the left who got conservatives to attack each other for days on end over something they did. If it's that easy, they're going to have a real easy time continuing this throughout the next cycle. So I think, and that's probably the more important reason that we got to take a step back and not jump on this stuff. It may not be one of us. It could be an outside actor who's attempting to cause chaos and discord amongst conservatives, and it's working. And one thing I can tell you from having talked to voters, who aren't online, who aren't on Twitter and Instagram and doing this thing, that we do every single day when we're in the trenches fighting these battles, and really what are our own echo chambers, to be honest. But for people who are just mom and pop and they just want to, they're conservatives and they want to support whatever candidate they want to support, they're looking at this and they hate this infighting when they hear about it. They don't like any of it. They think it's a bad look for everybody. They think it makes the entire party look bad. It makes conservatives look bad. It's beneath everyone involved. So, again, I think we got to get back to basics, talking about real issues, kitchen table issues. What's going to move the needle? What's going to get more voters to the polls? What's going to get more people registered to vote? What's going to bring over more independents and more people on the left who we desperately need? There are a lot of votes out there that we could capture. But if we're wasting our time on this nonsense, we're not giving anybody a reason to come over to our side.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is that we need independence if a Republican is going to prevail in 2024, and that's just the truth. And we need to have those hard conversations and build coalitions instead of tearing each other down. And so, my last question for you, Adrian Norman, and I really appreciate your time today, is your thoughts on the more of a forum rather than a debate tomorrow night in Iowa that President Trump is not attending, but Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, Asa Hutchinson, Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, I think a couple of others are going to have time to do that one-on-one with Tucker Carlson. And my opinion is, if I was still advising President Trump, I think he's right to not participate. I don't see any real upside to that because he just did an interview with Tucker Carlson not that long ago. He can kind of sit back, watch this, and maybe live Truth Social post. I don't see any real upside to him going, only downsides. So what's your thought on that? And in terms of what, right now, Ron DeSantis is polling in second place. What does he have to do? And what do the other candidates have to do to move the needle and start taking ground from President Trump? I mean, is this just going to be like here's why I'm better than Trump? I think that's kind of a losing message if they kind of cast him as the incumbent. And so, what do some of these candidates have to do to start making inroads?
Yeah, I agree with you. That's probably a bad idea for Trump to show up because, again, I mean, he's basically the incumbent. He has absolutely nothing to gain from an appearance and a lot to lose potentially. So I think I would advise him to stay home as well. As far as what could other candidates do to try to close the lead, I mean, I don't know if they can. I don't know if there's anything because when you look at the demographics of the people who are backing President Trump, I mean, diehard MAGA. He's not going to be abandoned. He's not going to peel away support as long as he's in the race. I think Rich Barris has done some videos on this as well, just going over the math and the numbers. It's statistically almost impossible for any other candidate to be able to overtake him for the GOP nomination, barring something major happening. So I don't know if it's a messaging issue. I don't think it's a policy issue. I think the people who are backing Trump, again, are doing it in part for the reasons that we went over earlier on the show. And they are not going to abandon him. They're not going to leave him unless something major happens. And there's some polling data out that shows that even if Trump were not to be the nominee, a lot of those backers who are supporting President Trump now are not going to get behind another GOP candidate. So there's a loyalty factor that I'm not sure at this point can be overcome.
Yeah, and I think that's actually one of the I agree with you, but I also think that that's one of the worst possible positions for people who are loyal to Trump to say that if he's not the nominee for whatever reason, they're not going to then support another GOP nominee, because that's just handing the election to the Democrats. And I think that's the worst possible thing we can do if we genuinely care about the country, as I know that President Trump does. I know he cares about the country. I know that that's the reason that he ran in 2016. And, while there's, been a lot of time, a lot of changes, a lot of, movement back and forth in terms of what people perceive about President Trump, I do know that that is true. But I also think that one of the things that the polls don't measure is intensity. And while there is a significant portion of the base, at least the MAGA base, that is that loyal, as you said, I think what's really interesting about these polls from like Rich Barris and others is that right now people are saying, yeah, I'm voting for Trump, almost like a placeholder. That's their default. They have to then be converted to actually check a different box. And that measure of intensity of how sold are you that that's your checkbox, you're never going to be convinced otherwise. What would have to happen, whether it's something in all of these indictments, whether it's something President Trump says or doesn't, whether it's something, a messaging policy, other issue that another candidate like Ron DeSantis says, that's what hasn't really been measured. And I do think that there is a significant portion that it's, only Trump. But I don't think that that is, the entire scope of all of his around 30 percentage point lead. So I would love to see some of the polls actually testing that only within states like Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, even Florida, some of these things, and say, ask those questions. What would it take to convince you? So I think it's going to be fascinating as we continue on in 2024, but I hope that everyone who's listening to this, the takeaway message here is don't trust everything that you see online. Do your own research. Question, be skeptical of everything. And then second, be country over any candidate or any personality, and make sure that we are making a meritorious argument for our preferred candidate, but having enough respect for our fellow conservatives and Republicans that we actually can say, I might disagree with you, but you're entitled to your preferred candidate. So Adrian, maybe that's too much to hope for, but I really appreciate you and a lot of other people kind of saying this message and saying it very loudly that we need to take a step back and stop all of this ridiculous mudslinging that I have not seen in politics in my lifetime. I think it's a really bad trajectory. So I hope we reverse course. But how can people find you and continue to listen to your message, read your articles? And I know you host a show yourself as well.
Yeah, if you guys want to yell at me, which a lot of people do, you can reach me pretty much on all platforms at Adrian Norman DC. So that would be Twitter, that would be Instagram. I mean, really all of them. Other than YouTube, it's just under Adrian Norman. So feel free to find me. I'm pretty active on most of those platforms, and I'm happy to take any heat, answer any questions, and explore some new ideas with people who aren't behaving like insane mad people.
Well said. All right. Well, thanks, my friend. Always great to have you, and look forward to talking to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, Jenna.
Have you ever picked up a towel set because it felt so soft in the store, but then when you leave and you go to use it, it's not really that absorbent? It's basically a towel that is leaving you out to dry. That's why MyPillow has developed the MyPillow towels that actually work. I know, it's totally mind-blowing. Towels that actually dry you. Their 6-piece towel set includes 2 bath towels, 2 hand towels, and 2 washcloths. They come in a variety of colors. I have the sage green and the white. I love them. And right now you can receive a 6-piece set for only $39.98 with promo code Jenna. That's JENNA. So go to mypillow.com right now and click on the radio listeners special. MyPillow products come with a 10-year warranty and have a 60-day money-back guarantee. So to receive this amazing offer on the 6-piece towel set of MyPillow towels, just go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener special, and enter promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, or call 1-800-564-8475. That's mypillow.com, promo code Jenna.